They thought it was just a wall. But behind the concrete was a soul waiting to be saved. A 5-year-old boy heard a cry no one else could. What he and his mother uncovered was not just a dog, but a miracle. A German shepherd buried alive. A secret government project. A bond between child and animal so deep, it defied science. And when the world turned its back, God sent a silent guardian. If this story moved your heart, type amen in the comments, share it with someone who still believes in miracles, subscribe for more stories that prove angels don't always have wings sometimes. They walk on 4 legs. May God bless you for watching. The late afternoon sun in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, filtered through bare branches like strands of golden thread, casting elongated shadows across the forest trail. Early November had stripped the oaks of their leaves, and a cold wind drifted down from the Ozark Mountains, rustling through brittle underbrush. The scent of pine mingled with damp earth, and somewhere far off, a crow cried, mournful and drawn out. It was the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but waiting. At the edge of the tree line, just where the forest gave way to a long-abandoned concrete plant, 2 figures stood motionless, staring at a crumbling structure that time had nearly erased. Claire Parker, 34, was tall, willowy, with shoulder-length chestnut hair often pulled into a messy bun. Her face held the quiet beauty of someone who once smiled easily, but now wore grief like a second skin. Years ago, Claire had been a bright-eyed nurse in Little Rock, warm, generous, the kind of woman who baked cookies for her neighbors and left handwritten thank-you notes for strangers. But since the divorce 2 years ago, something inside her had curled inward. Her ex-husband had left without warning, shattering not just the home, but the image of safety she'd clung to. Claire had relocated to Eureka Springs hoping for quiet, for healing, for space. But healing was slower than she'd hoped, especially for her son. She wrapped her coat tighter as a gust of wind cut through the trees and looked down at the small boy beside her. Logan Parker, barely 5, stood with his little boots planted firmly in a patch of brittle grass, his knit cap slipping slightly to one side. He had his mother's hazel eyes that looked too serious for someone so young. Once a chatterbox and the star of every playground game, Logan had grown increasingly withdrawn since the divorce. Doctors called it situational depressive regression. Claire called it heartbreak. He rarely spoke to other children anymore. He didn't throw tantrums. He just folded into himself. The only thing that seemed to bring him back, even a little, were their daily walks. The forest, the wind, the birds, they held something for him that no medication could. That day, Logan had chosen the path. They had followed it past old railroad tracks, down a slope littered with rusted bolts and broken glass, until they reached the abandoned Kingsley cement plant, a place Claire normally avoided. The structure stood like a forgotten relic, walls half collapsed, the roof gone in parts, and graffiti decorating every corner. Claire frowned as Logan tugged at her hand, pulling her toward a far wall that curved into shadow. "Mommy," Logan said, voice just above a whisper, "someone's crying." Claire stopped. "Sweetheart, I don't hear anything." But Logan didn't look at her. He was staring at a moss-covered concrete wall, cracked in places but oddly intact compared to the rest of the plant. His breath fogged in the cold as he stepped closer, then placed his small hand against the surface like it could talk back. "They're sad," he said. Claire crouched down, eyeing the wall with skepticism. Maybe an animal, she thought. Maybe a squirrel trapped. But Logan was insistent. "Please listen," he said, guiding her hand toward the wall. She leaned in. At first, there was only silence. But then, just at the edge of perception, a whimper. Faint, rasping, drawn out like someone exhaling through a wound. She pulled back, eyes wide. "Oh my God," she whispered. Claire stood quickly, eyes scanning the wall's surface. There was something strange about this section. No vines, no moss, just bare gray cement that looked smoother than the rest. And at the base, where the wall met the dirt, the concrete had a cleaner sheen, almost like it had been poured recently. Her heart began to race. "Logan, stay behind me," she said, her voice tense now. She pulled a pocket knife from her coat, more habit than weapon, and scraped it along the surface. Fine white dust fell. She leaned in again, this time pressing her ear against the cold slab. The whimper came again, softer, weaker, like whatever was behind there was dying. "This isn't right," Claire muttered. Logan stayed close, wide-eyed, but not afraid. In fact, he looked calm, focused. "They put him in there," he said simply. "Who did?" "The bad ones," Logan said, then turned to her. "We have to get him out." Claire looked at the wall, then back at her son. "Logan, how do you know it's a him?" He shrugged, like it was obvious. "Because he told me." A shiver ran up her spine, and not from the cold. Claire stood. The nearest road was half a mile away. She'd left her car parked near a ranger checkpoint. There was no signal out here. She considered carrying Logan back and calling the sheriff. But what would she say? "My son heard a dog behind a wall?" They'd laugh. Or worse, dismiss her completely. No, she'd seen too many cases go ignored, because no one acted fast enough. And if someone had sealed an animal behind solid concrete, they weren't coming back. She stepped away from the wall, eyes scanning the surroundings. Near the old loading dock, a pile of discarded tools rusted in the dirt. She spotted a crowbar, half buried beneath a warped plank. Pulling it free, she returned to the wall. Logan stepped back. He did. With both hands wrapped tightly around the handle, she raised the crowbar and struck the wall with a heavy clang. The sound echoed like a bell through the trees. She struck again, and again. The concrete began to crack. Each blow sent chips flying. Logan didn't flinch. He just stood silently watching. On the fifth strike, the wall gave way. A hole opened just large enough to let in a sliver of light, and then she saw it. A pair of eyes, golden brown, sunken, ringed with pain. They blinked slowly as the light touched them. Claire dropped the crowbar. Oh my God! The hole widened with one more strike, and a black snout, crusted with dried blood and dust, poked through. The figure behind it didn't bark, didn't move. It just looked at her, too weak even to tremble. A German shepherd, or what was left of one. Fur matted, bones prominent, dying. And then Logan stepped forward. "That's him," he said softly. "His name is Ghost." Claire stared at him, speechless. "We have to help him," Logan whispered. Claire swallowed hard, kneeling beside the hole and reaching out carefully. The dog didn't pull back, didn't growl. When her fingers brushed his snout, she felt a faint shudder of breath. He was still alive, but barely, and someone had tried very hard to make sure he wasn't. The wind had picked up by the time Claire bundled Logan into the back seat of her car, which was parked just beyond the forest trail. The November cold cut sharper now, like invisible blades through cloth. She'd wrapped Ghost in Logan's thickest blanket, the frayed navy one with little stars stitched along the edges, and laid him gently in the trunk area of the station wagon, careful to avoid pressure on the dog's sunken ribs. Ghost didn't protest. He didn't move much at all, except for the shallow rise and fall of his chest, each breath a fading thread in a tapestry slowly unraveling. Claire drove fast but smooth. The nearest veterinary clinic was 20 minutes away, back through the winding roads of Eureka Springs. She barely noticed the faded wooden storefronts and crooked fences that passed in a blur. Her hands were tight on the wheel, knuckles pale, but her mind raced faster than the speedometer. Logan sat quietly in the back seat, his small hands folded in his lap. His eyes weren't wide with fear or confusion. Instead, they were steady, watchful, as if he understood exactly what was happening. Every few minutes, he turned to look at Ghost and whispered something Claire couldn't quite hear. "What are you saying to him?" she asked finally, voice cracking under the pressure. Logan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I'm telling him to stay," he said softly. "I'm telling him we're real." Claire blinked back tears. The clinic came into view, a single-story brick building with chipped teal paint and a lopsided sign that read Willow Creek Animal Hospital. A string of fairy lights flickered around the front windows, early Christmas decor put up too soon. She pulled into the lot and ran to the door, Logan trailing behind her. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. A bell jingled overhead. From behind the front desk stood Tamara Boyd, a petite woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked auburn hair, cut just below the jawline. She wore round glasses and a mustard-colored sweater that looked 2 sizes too big, sleeves pushed to her elbows. Years of handling animals had given her the gentle, patient air of someone who listened more than she spoke, but her sharp eyes missed nothing. "Can I help? Why? Oh dear," she murmured, catching sight of the bundle in Claire's arms. "He's dying," Claire said breathlessly. "We found him in a wall, sealed in concrete. Please, can you?" Tamara didn't wait. She pushed the swinging half-door aside and gestured toward the back. "Bring him in. Room 2. They moved quickly. Claire laid Ghost on the steel exam table, and Tamara's hands were already assessing, checking eyes, gums, pulse, breathing. She clucked under her breath and hooked up oxygen, and in 4-line with practice speed. Another woman entered the room, a tall vet tech named Andrea, early 30s, broad-shouldered, short buzzed hair, and tattoos peeking from beneath her scrubs. She didn't ask questions, just worked. Claire stood off to the side, gripping Logan's hand as machines beeped and plastic tubes hissed. Emaciated, starving, dehydrated. "No signs of broken bones," Tamara murmured. "But the lacerations on his legs look like wire. Barbed, maybe." And she paused. Her fingers had moved to Ghost's neck, where beneath the fur, something hard was embedded. "There's a chip," she said, frowning. "But it's deep. Not a standard pet tracker. Andrea, get the scanner." Andrea returned moments later with a digital reader, waved it over the area, and stared at the screen. "No registration. No data. Just a blank code," she said, puzzled. Tamara raised an eyebrow. "Odd." Claire felt a chill rise again in her spine. "He was put there on purpose," she said. "Like someone didn't just abandon him. They tried to hide him." Logan released Claire's hand and stepped forward. He placed both palms lightly on Ghost's head, just behind the ears. The dog didn't flinch. Instead, a faint whimper escaped his throat, and for the first time his eyes moved, not toward the lights or the machines, but directly into Logan's. Tamara froze. "That dog just responded." Claire nodded. "He called him Ghost," she said. Tamara looked between mother and son. "How did he know the name?" "He just said it," Claire replied. "Like it came to him." Tamara studied Logan for a moment longer, but said nothing. Then she turned to Andrea. "Let's stabilize him. Fluids, mild sedative, and keep that foregoing. Claire, you can wait in the lounge. I'll let you know once we're through." Claire didn't want to leave Ghost, but she understood. She and Logan sat in the small waiting area, worn couches, an old coffee machine humming in the corner. A wall full of pet photos stared back at her, dogs with birthday hats, cats curled on quilts, ferrets in holiday sweaters. Lives that mattered. A woman entered from the back office and sat behind the front desk. She was older, mid-60s, with tightly curled gray hair and a stiff way of moving. Her name tag read Muriel. She glanced at Claire with polite disinterest, then returned to her crossword puzzle. Claire leaned close to Logan. "Honey, how did you know about Ghost?" "About his name?" Logan looked down at his shoes. "He told me." "In words?" "No, just in my head. It's like when you remember a dream that isn't yours." Claire's heart beat louder. There was no way to make sense of what he was saying. But something about it didn't feel like imagination. An hour passed before Tamara returned. "He's stable," she said. "Weak. But hanging on. He's going to need close monitoring for the next 48 hours. And a scan. I want to know what's in his shoulder. That chip doesn't feel standard." Claire nodded. "Can I see him?" Tamara led her and Logan back into the room. Ghost lay on a warm blanket, breathing slow and steady. His ribs still showed, but his eyes no longer looked lost. As Logan approached, Ghost's ears twitched. Claire crouched next to Tamara. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" Tamara hesitated. "Once. Years ago. A dog came in from a nearby lab. A place doing neural feedback testing on K9 units. Shut down in the 90s. But the things they tried, communication implants, synthetic empathy triggers, it wasn't science fiction. It was real. Most dogs didn't survive the experiments." Claire stared. You think Ghost came from something like that? I don't know, Tamara said. But someone didn't want him found. Logan lay down next to the dog and whispered again. Ghost opened his eyes and gave a soft, slow wag of his tail. The night outside Willow Creek Animal Hospital had thickened into an eerie silence, the kind that settled heavily between trees and beneath eaves like a warning unspoken. The cold was sharper now, enough to leave a sheen of frost on windshields and kiss the edges of breath with silver mist. Inside the clinic, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting a pale glow across the tiled floor. Claire sat in the corner of the observation room, arms folded tightly over her chest, eyes locked on Ghost as he lay still beneath a soft heat lamp. Logan sat cross-legged on the floor beside the German shepherd, whispering gently to the dog whose breathing had stabilized but remained shallow. The four-bag pulsed rhythmically behind them, like a second heartbeat keeping time. Claire's gaze drifted between the machines, the wires, the soft rise and fall of Ghost's ribs, and then to her son, so calm, so attuned. Something had shifted in Logan. She didn't know when it had started exactly, but it was unmistakable now. He spoke more clearly. His voice had weight. And when he looked at Ghost, it wasn't the gaze of a child looking at a pet. It was something older, something shared. Tamara entered with a tablet in hand and a deep crease in her brow. Claire, I need to talk to you privately. Claire rose silently and followed the veterinarian into her office. The room was cramped but warm, cluttered with dog figurines and old anatomy posters curling at the corners. Tamara shut the door behind them and set the tablet on her desk, spinning it toward Claire. We managed to get a more detailed scan, she began. That chip in Ghost's shoulder, it's encased in a polymer that doesn't match anything I've seen in domestic implants. And here's the strange part. It's not just a tracker. It has an active transmission signature. Something's still pinging it. Claire's eyes widened. So someone knows where he is? Tamara nodded grimly. Or they will soon. Claire exhaled slowly. You think this is military? Tamara hesitated. Years ago, there were rumors of experimental programs, projects where they tried to enhance K9 units through neural tech, boost cognitive response, maybe even explore interspecies empathy models. It never went public, and most people think it was abandoned after a few failed trials. But if Ghost is one of them, Claire said, why dump him in a wall? Why not destroy the chip or put him down? Tamara leaned back in her chair. Because something went wrong. Maybe he remembered something. Maybe he bonded too deeply. Either way, they wanted him gone but not found. That wall was a grave. Claire rubbed her temples, feeling the beginnings of a headache building behind her eyes. And now Logan's connecting with him. Empathy goes both ways, Tamara said. If Ghost's been altered to transmit emotional signals, and your son is particularly sensitive. Wait, are you saying Ghost is talking to him? I'm saying your son is hearing something he shouldn't be able to. And that chip might be the reason. Meanwhile, in the observation room, Logan leaned closer to Ghost, his tiny hand brushing the dog's head. You don't have to be scared, he whispered. I know the dark hurts. I know the cage. I was there too, but we got out, remember? Ghost gave a soft huff, tail flicking once. Andrea, the vet tech, watched from the hallway with narrowed eyes. That's not normal, she muttered to herself. Back in the office, Claire stood abruptly. If someone's tracking that chip, we can't stay here. What if they come looking for him? Tamara nodded. I agree. I've seen military types show up for less. Can you disable it? Not safely. It's embedded deep into muscle. He'd never survive surgery in this condition. But I might know someone who can neutralize the signal without removing the chip. Who? Tamara sighed. An old college lab partner. Name's Dr. Richard Elston. Used to work for a defense contractor before quitting after some ethics scandal. He's a recluse now, lives in the outskirts of Fayetteville. Tinkers with illegal signal dampeners. But if anyone can scramble that thing, it's him. Claire didn't even hesitate. Then we go. Tamara hesitated. It's a risk. You'd have to transport Ghost yourself. He's fragile. Any shock to his system. I'll be careful, Claire said firmly. But I'm not risking someone showing up here in the middle of the night, and taking him. Tamara nodded reluctantly. I'll get the portable monitors and oxygen tank ready. An hour later, Claire's station wagon was prepped. The back seat was folded down flat, covered in blankets and foam pads. Ghost was loaded carefully with Logan lying beside him. Andrea handed Claire a small device. Portable Vital Monitor. It beeps if anything drops too low. Drive slow. And if it flashes red, call Tamara. Immediately. Thank you, Claire said, her voice quiet but steady. As they pulled out of the parking lot, the wind howled through the trees like a warning. Claire glanced in the mirror. Logan was already whispering again, eyes half closed, one hand resting on Ghost's flank. For 2 hours, they drove through the back roads, the forest crowding in close on either side, headlights cutting through mist and dark. No cars passed. No towns lit the horizon. Just trees and moonlight and the rhythmic beep of the vitals monitor. Fayetteville finally appeared like a shadow on the edge of morning. They turned down a gravel road marked "Private Trespassers Will Be Shot" and approached a rundown cabin behind a chain-link gate. Dr. Richard Elston answered after 3 hard knocks. He was in his late 60s, tall and wiry with unkempt white hair and thick goggles perched on his forehead. His flannel shirt was stained with oil, and he smelled faintly of solder and whiskey. "You Tamara's girl," he grunted. Claire nodded. "We need your help." He squinted past her shoulder, saw the shape of Ghost in the car. "That one got a pulse?" "Barely." "Then come in. But quick." The morning in Fayetteville cracked open beneath a slate-gray sky, heavy with the promise of rain. The air was humid, thick like soup, and the pine trees lining Dr. Elston's property swayed gently in the breeze, whispering secrets to one another. Inside the cluttered workshop that doubled as Elston's lab, wires draped like spider webs across shelves stacked with oscilloscopes, broken CRT monitors, rusting radio equipment, and strange blinking machines that hummed with unknown purposes. The place smelled like ozone, copper, and a hint of bourbon. Claire stood near a battered metal table where Ghost lay resting, his breathing steadier now, thanks to the oxygen tank and fluids still feeding into his system. A makeshift antenna rig surrounded him, thin copper coils taped around the table legs, connected to a strange dome-shaped device with a blinking blue light. Elston, hunched over a keyboard made of salvaged parts, typed furiously. His eyes, magnified comically by his thick goggles, darted between screens filled with cascading code and rotating wireframe images of a dog's anatomy. "Your boy still with the mutt?" Elston muttered without looking up. Claire turned. "Yes. Logan won't leave his side." "Good," the old man grunted. "He's keeping the signal stable. I don't know how or why, but that connection between them, it's grounding the surge." From the far side of the room, Logan sat on a blanket beside Ghost, scribbling with crayons on the back of a paper blueprint Elston had tossed aside. His shoulders were hunched in focus, tongue peeking slightly from the corner of his mouth as he drew. Claire stepped closer and froze. The picture showed a long hallway, sterile and white. Along its walls were glass windows revealing what looked like cages. Inside them, silhouettes of children, heads shaved, wires trailing from their necks. Beside the cages were dogs. Some sat. Others lay curled in corners. A few had glowing red marks drawn over their foreheads. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" Claire asked softly. "It's the place Ghost came from," Logan said, not looking up. "He shows it to me. Not with words, but like pictures in my head." Claire's breath caught. Elston walked over, peered down, and whistled low. "Well, hell," he murmured. "That's Fort Lancer. Or what used to be it." "What's Fort Lancer?" Claire asked. "Military compound. Shuttered 20 years ago after a biocommunication project went sideways. Rumor was they tested neural sync systems between K9S and trauma-affected children. Turned M into living conduits. Most dogs died. Most kids, well, no one ever confirmed what happened to them." Claire stared at her son, who was now drawing red XS over certain rooms in the blueprint. "I think Ghost remembers," Logan said. "And now I remember too." Before Claire could respond, a sharp knock came from the cabin door. Elston froze. Claire's pulse spiked. Logan crawled behind a table. Elston crossed to the monitor, showing a live feed from an external camera. A black SUV idled at the gate. A man in a tailored charcoal suit stood beside it, short blonde hair, sunglasses too dark for the weather. In his hand, a leather folder. "He doesn't belong around here," Elston muttered. "Feds don't usually knock." Claire opened the door a sliver. "Can I help you?" The man smiled politely, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Ma'am, my name is Agent Callan, with the National Biocontainment Security Bureau. We received a report that an animal carrying an unregistered neural transmitter has been located in this vicinity. We're here to recover the specimen." Claire's fingers tightened on the door frame. "I don't know what you're talking about." He pulled a laminated ID and flashed it quickly. Too quickly. "Elston?" Claire called over her shoulder. The old man limped up, squinting hard. "That badge is fake," he muttered. "Font's wrong. They haven't used that seal since 2008. Claire turned back. "We don't have your specimen. And even if we did, I'm not signing anything." Agent Callan's smile faltered. "I assure you, ma'am, it's in your best interest." Claire didn't blink. "Then show me the warrant." Callan adjusted his sunglasses. "This is a courtesy, not a seizure." "Then you're trespassing," Elston snapped. "And if you're still here in 60 seconds, I'm letting loose the dogs, and not the polite kind." For a second, something flickered in Callan's posture, like he was debating whether to escalate. But then he smiled again, turned slowly, and walked back to the SUV. Without a word, the vehicle reversed down the gravel road and vanished into the trees. Claire slammed the door and locked it. "That wasn't real, was it?" "No," Elston said. "But the threat was." That evening, Elston handed Claire a small handheld device about the size of a pager. "It's a scrambler. Just finished it. Won't disable the chip, but it'll throw off tracking long enough to keep you two ahead of whoever's sniffing. Keep it close to Ghost." Claire held the device like it was a bomb. "Where should we go?" she asked. "There's an old ranger station in Ozark National Forest, 10 miles west. Long abandoned. But I rigged it for emergencies. Radio solar supplies. You and the dogs stay off-grid there while I clean up here." Claire nodded. "You sure they won't come back?" "They might," Elston admitted. "But I've got a few tricks left." That night, Claire and Logan packed up again. Ghost, slightly stronger now, was able to stand with help and took wobbly steps into the car. The drive was longer this time, the roads narrower and unmarked. Rain began to fall in sheets, drumming on the roof like distant footsteps. Logan leaned into Claire's shoulder. "Ghost says we're not alone." She looked down at him. "What do you mean?" "He says the others, the kids, they're still out there. And someone's watching to make sure we don't find them." The forest swallowed them whole. By dawn, the storm had passed, but the air remained damp and heavy, leaves glistening with rain, the earth thick and soft beneath the tires of Claire's station wagon. Ghost lay curled on a blanket in the back, his breath stronger, though still labored. Logan sat beside him, gazing out the window as if he recognized every tree, every turn, every shadow between branches. Claire gripped the wheel tighter as the gravel path narrowed into what barely qualified as a road. Just ahead, the forest opened slightly to reveal the outline of a forgotten structure. The cabin stood hidden beneath a canopy of ancient pines, their trunks gnarled and thick with moss. The roof sagged in the middle, covered in patches of damp leaves and rusted tin. Ivy curled around its frame like fingers refusing to let go. It looked abandoned, but not dead. Something about the silence here felt intentional. Ghost perked up as the car stopped, his ears twitching, tail thumping once. Logan reached out and gently opened the door. Ghost leapt out, not with the strength of a fully recovered dog, but with the determination of one drawn home. Claire followed him as he limped to the porch, nose lowered, steps sure. She unlocked the cabin using the key Elston had given her, and pushed the door open slowly. The inside smelled of cedar, dust, and old electricity. Faded light trickled in through broken blinds. A heavy wood desk sat beneath a boarded-up window, littered with notepads, diagrams, and old coffee-stained maps. A bookshelf against the far wall sagged under the weight of binders labeled with things like cortical alignment, Echo Trial Number 6, and Synaptic Integrity Test logs. On the far table was a dusty laptop with a cracked screen, its charging cable coiled beside it like a sleeping snake. Claire exhaled. This place belonged to someone who knew what they were doing. Ghost padded over to a corner and lay down as if he'd done so 1,000 times before. Logan stood by the window, silent, his eyes locked on the woods beyond. "We've been here before," he said, not as a question. Claire turned sharply. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," he whispered. "Ghost says it's safe. But not for long." After wiping dust from the laptop, Claire plugged it into a small solar-powered inverter mounted to the wall. The screen flickered to life, asking for a password. Logan walked over, typed in Marcus with slow precision, then stepped back. The desktop opened with a soft chime. Claire stared. "How did you?" "He told me," Logan said simply, pointing to Ghost. Files filled the screen, folders labeled Project Echo Confidential, subject logs, and one simply named Quinn_video. Claire clicked it. A grainy video filled the screen. A woman mid-40s, with dark auburn hair pulled into a tight bun, stared into the camera. Her lab coat was unbuttoned, sleeves rolled to the elbows, and there were deep shadows beneath her eyes. Her name badge read Dr. Ainsley Quinn. She spoke in a voice that was once clinical, now cracked at the edges. "If you're watching this, I'm likely dead, or worse, detained. My name is Dr. Ainsley Quinn. I was lead cognitive engineer on Project Echo, based out of Fort Lancer." She glanced away briefly, hands trembling. "We were told we were saving children, pairing them with dogs trained to recognize trauma patterns and respond through neural synchronization. What we really did was turn them into experiments." Claire leaned closer, jaw tight. Subject 7, codenamed Ghost, was the only pairing to survive long-term without neurological decay. His bond with Subject 12, Marcus, was unlike anything we'd seen. When the shutdown order came, most dogs were decommissioned. Marcus vanished. We never found him. Ghost was supposed to be put down. He escaped instead. I helped him. The video cut for a moment, then resumed, this time shakier. I encoded a homing protocol. If he found someone with the same neurosignature as Marcus, he would protect them, or guide them here. If you're seeing this, he found someone, and they need to be protected at all costs. Claire turned to look at Logan. He was drawing again, this time, a strange circular room with lights embedded in the floor and wires running into chairs arranged like a clock. "Logan," she said softly, "who's Marcus?" The boy didn't stop drawing. "He's the one Ghost misses." The rain began again, light at first, then steady. Claire pulled the blinds closed, set a lantern on the table, and turned back to the laptop. She browsed through a folder labeled Echo Maps. Inside were detailed blueprints of underground labs, corridors hidden beneath old ranger stations and decommissioned army posts. Logan brought over his newest sketch. Claire froze. It matched one of the maps. Perfectly. "How?" "I see it when I sleep," Logan said, his voice trembling. "And when I wake up, it's still there." That night, Claire laid Logan down on an old cot beside the fireplace. Ghost curled beside him protectively, nose tucked under Logan's arm. Claire couldn't sleep. She scrolled through more documents, case notes, failed sync trials, security memos about psychoresonant breaches. Some children had gone catatonic. Some turned violent. One folder was empty, titled only Subject 12 Redacted. The wind howled through the trees. Just past midnight, Logan sat bolt upright, eyes open but distant. Claire rushed to him. "Logan!" He stood, eyes blank, and walked to the desk. He opened a drawer she hadn't seen, reached inside, and pulled out a metal key card. It was faded but readable. Echo Access Sublevel B Marcus Quinn. He handed it to Claire and whispered, "We need to go back." "To where?" "The place where it started." Ghost let out a soft growl, low and rumbling. From the forest, something moved. Something watching. The morning broke with a ghostly stillness. The forest, usually alive with rustling branches and chirping birds, now stood silent as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. A low fog curled along the ground, softening every outline, blurring the space between what was real and what was memory. Claire sat at the desk in the dim cabin, her fingers trembling as she clicked through folder after folder, each one peeling away the comforting lies she had told herself since Logan was born. Ghost lay at Logan's feet near the fireplace, his golden brown coat now thicker, shinier, almost regal, his eyes clear, alert. He no longer whimpered in his sleep, no longer flinched when touched. There was strength returning to him, but not just physical strength. There was awareness, as if something deep within him had been reignited by Logan's presence. Claire's gaze kept drifting back to the file-marked, synchronized subject profiles. She had opened it 3 times now, but couldn't bring herself to read more than a line or two. Finally, with the screen flickering faintly in the dim cabin light, she forced herself to scroll. Subject 12, Marcus Quinn male, 7 years, high neural compatibility with K9-07, ghost. Primary emotion channel, protective aggression. Terminated, status unknown. Subject 19, Logan, last name redacted, male, 5 years. Unplanned subject. Compatible with K9-07. Natural synchronicity without artificial enhancement. No known enrollment authorization. Observation ongoing. Claire's heart pounded. Her fingers curled into fists as she read the words again. No known enrollment authorization. She leaned back in the wooden chair, which creaked in protest. Her mind spiraled through memories. Logan's sleepless nights, the strange drawings, the way he often spoke of places he'd never been, people he shouldn't have known. How had he known Ghost's name? How had he unlocked a password-protected laptop without ever seeing the word Marcus before? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of small footsteps on old wood. Logan stood at the edge of the room, wrapped in a blanket too big for his frame, holding his sketchpad close to his chest. "You found out, didn't you?" he said softly. Claire turned, trying to keep her voice steady. "Found out what, sweetheart?" "That I've always known him," Logan replied, gesturing toward Ghost. "Even before you found him." Claire rose slowly and knelt beside him. "Logan, do you remember anything? About a place before we moved here?" Logan hesitated, eyes flickering like candlelight. "Not like a dream. More like a movie that plays in my chest. I don't see it, but I feel it. There were other kids. Some of them cried all the time. Some didn't speak. There were white walls, buzzing lights. And Ghost, he kept us calm. He helped us breathe." Claire's skin prickled. "Do you remember where it was?" He shook his head. "No, but he does." Logan pointed to Ghost, who had lifted his head as if he understood every word. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Claire jumped to her feet and reached for the fire poker. But it was only Dr. Elston, the veterinarian. He stood hunched against the doorway, his face pale, his breath clouding in the cold air. His coat was stained with pine needles and flecks of mud. Claire hadn't expected to ever see him again. He stepped inside, shutting the door quickly behind him. "You have to leave. Now." Claire frowned. "What? Why?" Elston pulled off his gloves, revealing shaking hands. "They know. The agency, whoever they are, they found the lab's broadcast signal last night. That chip in Ghost's shoulder? It wasn't just for synchronization. It was a tracker, but only when he's within range of a child who can activate it. Like Logan." Claire's breath hitched. "Are you saying my son is broadcasting?" "In a way, yes," Elston said. "But not consciously. The neural bond triggers the chip. And now they're coming to reclaim both of them." Claire looked down at Ghost. He growled low, ears back, as if already sensing the invisible threat pressing in from the edges of the woods. "Then we fight," she whispered. Elston shook his head. "You can't fight them. You run. But before you go," he pulled a folded paper from his pocket. It was an old blueprint. "This shows the location of another facility. I thought it was decommissioned, but Quinn's notes suggest otherwise. You might find more answers there, or someone who can help." He glanced toward Logan. "Your son, he's not just compatible. He's the key. The only natural subject they've ever recorded. He's what they were trying to create artificially for years. And now that Ghost has reconnected with him, the signal's back on. They won't stop." Claire's voice cracked. "Why him?" "I don't know," Elston said gently. But I think Dr. Quinn did. She left more than files. She left intentions. Logan stepped forward. We'll go. But Ghost has to lead. Ghost stood. Strong now. Steady. Elston handed Claire a medical kit. There's antibiotics, sedatives, food for both of them. You'll need to head west, past the river ridge. There's an old ranger outpost marked here. He pointed to the map. If you make it there, the signal will drop. Temporarily. Claire nodded. What about you? He gave a tired smile. They're not after me. Logan grabbed his sketch pad and scribbled something quickly. A dark hallway. A thick door marked with red letters. And a phrase, not safe. He held it up to Elston. Don't go there. I won't, the doctor said quietly. They packed quickly, Claire's heart heavy with a truth she hadn't wanted but could no longer ignore. Her son wasn't just a sensitive, gifted child. He had been part of something monstrous. And yet, his spirit remained whole. Untouched. Somehow, that made him more powerful than all their failed experiments. As they stepped out into the pale gray morning, Ghost leading the way, Claire looked back once at the cabin that had held so many secrets. Then she turned toward the river. The forest didn't speak. But Ghost did. He walked ahead, not just as a guide, but as something ancient, something wronged, something ready to protect. And Logan followed, quiet but resolute. They were no longer just running. They were moving toward something. Something buried. And soon unearthed. The wind howled through the pine canopy like a chorus of ancient voices warning of something wicked on its way. The fog had thickened since dawn, wrapping around the cabin in dense, shifting folds that made every shadow feel alive. Claire adjusted the straps on her backpack, her fingers numb with cold, but her heart racing too fast to feel anything else. Logan, bundled tightly in a wool coat that dwarfed his small frame, leaned heavily against her side. His eyes were dimmer today. He hadn't spoken since early morning. Ghost had gone ahead, silent, focused, his golden coat almost vanishing in the silver light. He didn't need commands anymore. He knew what was coming. Back in the clearing, where the cabin had once offered brief sanctuary, they were already arriving. The sound of engines pierced the stillness first, deep, mechanical growls that did not belong in the forest. Then came the flashes of tactical gear between trees. The Special Response Unit moved like shadows with rifles. Their helmets bore no insignia. Their radios buzzed with coded chatter. The lead among them, a man named Agent Nolan Vex, gave a sharp hand signal. He was a tall, broad-shouldered figure in black, with close-cropped blonde hair and glacier-gray eyes that missed nothing. Nolan had once been a soldier, but that had been a lifetime ago, before he became the government's favorite eraser. Target is confirmed, he said into his comms. K9 and child within 300 meters. Intercept now. No civilian casualties unless necessary. Claire felt the subtle shift in Ghost's posture even from a distance. Without looking back, the German shepherd broke into a sprint, not toward safety, but straight toward the unit. He vanished into the mist like a phantom, barking once, sharp, loud, and final. It was a command. Run. Claire didn't hesitate. She scooped Logan into her arms and turned toward the narrow path Elston had marked. It was barely more than a forgotten game trail winding through thick underbrush and rotting logs, but it would take them to the abandoned ranger outpost, the place where the signal would go dark. Hopefully. The air grew colder as they moved deeper into the woods. Logan began to shiver violently, his lips pale, sweat clinging to his forehead. Claire pressed her lips to his temple. Just a little longer, baby. Stay with me. At the same time, Ghost darted between trees, weaving through the dense undergrowth with a grace that no ordinary animal should possess. He could feel their heat signatures even through the brush. They were tracking him, not Logan. Good. That meant the boy was still safe. But Ghost wasn't just running. He was remembering. The pain of the facility. The cold steel of operating tables. The children who cried without sound. And Marcus. Sweet, brave Marcus. The boy he had failed. Or had he? The memories blurred, but now he had Logan, and this time he wouldn't fail. A burst of gunfire cracked the silence. Ghost leapt sideways, dodging the tranquilizer dart that whizzed past. Another dart grazed his flank, burning like acid. He stumbled but kept running, leading them further from the path. Back on the trail, Claire reached a ridge and spotted the outline of the ranger station, half buried in ivy and moss, its windows long broken, roof sagging. She pushed open the heavy door with her shoulder and stumbled inside. The place smelled of mold and dust, but it was shelter. She laid Logan gently on a dusty cot. His breathing was shallow now, his skin clammy. "Logan, look at me. Look at Mommy." His eyes fluttered open for a moment. "He's hurting," Logan murmured. "I feel it." Claire froze. Ghost. The link between them, it wasn't just emotional. It was biological. Neural. If Ghost was hurt, Logan felt it. And if Ghost died? Claire turned, frantically searching the shelves. Old Ranger equipment, rotted medical kits, flare guns, canned rations. Then at last, she spotted the shortwave radio. She powered it on. The light flickered, buzzed, then steadied. Claire didn't know the frequencies. She didn't care. She just pressed the button and prayed. "This is Claire Parker," she said, voice shaking. "I'm with my son and an injured German shepherd believed to be part of a classified project. We're at the Ranger outpost west of Hollow Ridge. If anyone is listening, please, we need help. They're hunting us. Please." She released the button. Static crackled. Then silence. Claire slumped forward, fingers clutching the edge of the table. Outside, the fog shifted again, and Ghost reappeared. Blood matted his side where the dart had struck, but he stood tall, his breathing labored but steady. Claire ran to him, tears falling freely. "You came back." He limped inside, collapsed beside Logan, and licked the boy's hand. Logan stirred, his chest rising more evenly now, as if Ghost's mere presence was medicine. Claire knelt beside them both, holding them close. "We're not done yet," she whispered. "But we're together." From the forest edge, Nolan Vex watched through binoculars. He had found the cabin, found the trail, but he had lost the dog. And more importantly, the connection had gone dark. He keyed into his radio. "They've crossed into blackout range. Signals cut, awaiting further instructions." A pause. Then a cold voice replied, "Do not let them reach Facility Echo. Use force if necessary." Nolan's jaw tightened. He didn't like killing children, but orders were orders. The wind had died by morning, but the forest held its breath. A hush had fallen over the ranger station, broken only by the shallow rise and fall of Logan's breathing and the soft huff of Ghost as he lay protectively by the boy's side. Claire hadn't slept, her body curled awkwardly on the cold wooden floor, one hand resting on Logan's arm and the other on Ghost's matted fur, still stained with dried blood. Her eyes, sunken and ringed with exhaustion, snapped open at the faint crunch of boots on frost-bitten gravel outside. A shadow passed the window, tall, deliberate, but unhurried. Claire stood quickly and reached for the rusted flare gun on the shelf. It was the only weapon she had. She stepped in front of Logan and waited, heart pounding, the silence stretching unbearably until a knock, gentle but firm, came at the warped wooden door. "Claire Parker?" A voice called out, male calm, with a faint rasp like someone who had smoked too long or screamed too much. "I'm not with them. I'm here because of him. The dog." Claire didn't move. "Back away. I'll leave my weapon outside the door. Just look at who's with me." A pause. Then a soft whine. Ghost's ears twitched. He stood, wobbled, and barked once, low and questioning. Claire cracked the door open, just wide enough to see. The man standing outside was in his late 40s, tall and wiry with graying brown hair that curled slightly under his collar. His clothes were damp from the fog and covered in forest grit, an old canvas jacket, heavy boots, and a faded red flannel shirt beneath. A camera dangled from a strap around his neck, scratched and battered like it had seen wars. His face was gaunt but not fragile, with sharp cheekbones, a strong nose, and blue eyes that burned with purpose behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had the air of someone who'd lived in shadows too long to trust the light. "My name's Marcus King," he said. "I used to be a journalist, until I started looking into things that weren't supposed to exist." Claire hesitated, then opened the door fully. Marcus stepped in slowly, holding his hands up. Thank you. Ghost limped to him and pressed his head against Marcus's thigh. Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. You know him? Marcus knelt beside Ghost, rubbing behind his ears. I knew of him. Dr. Ainsley Quinn mentioned a dog like this in the files she sent me. Said he was different. Smarter. More human than canine. She called him Ghost, same as your son did. That's what convinced me this was real. Claire studied him carefully. What do you want? I want the truth out, and I think you do too. He pulled off his backpack and laid it on the table. From it, he retrieved a waterproof pouch filled with paper files, flash drives, and a cracked hard drive held together by electrical tape. Everything Dr. Quinn risked her life to smuggle out of Project Echo is in here. She believed one of the dogs would find the right child, a child who could bond with it in a way they never expected. She thought that bond would lead the project to be exposed. And now, here we are. Claire's eyes flicked toward Logan, who stirred slightly, lips parted as if caught between sleep and speech. Ghost moved toward him and gently placed his head on the boy's leg. Logan's eyes fluttered open. Ghost, he murmured, and then, like color returning to a black and white world, his cheeks flushed faintly and his voice grew stronger. You came back. Claire gasped. She knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. Marcus watched silently. That's what Project Echo was after. Neural resonance. Emotional syncing. The dogs were embedded with chips designed to amplify empathy. But they never expected a child could respond so perfectly. Logan is what they call a receiver, someone with naturally open brain frequencies. Rare. Extremely rare. Claire frowned. Are you saying he was part of this before? No, Marcus said. But I believe someone wanted him to be. He laid out a series of photos, old security camera images, lab documents, schematics of a hidden facility labeled Echo Base Site B. Dr. Quinn told me only 3 dogs escaped. Ghost is one. The others we don't know. But she believed they'd search for compatible children. Not by design, but instinct. Ghost found Logan, and something in Logan responded. That connection, it's stronger than any experiment ever predicted. Claire stared at the grainy photo of the lab's interior. Children in sterile white rooms. Observation cameras. A dog behind glass. We have to stop it. Marcus nodded. That's why I came. I followed chatter from intercepted communications. They know you're here. But we have a chance. There's a signal relay tower 2 miles from here, abandoned, but I can patch into the old broadcast channel. I used it before to leak military corruption. If I can get these files out in time, the world will see. Claire hesitated. And then what? They'll come for Logan. Then we disappear, Marcus said. But we won't be running blind. We'll be running loud. Logan sat up, weak but conscious. He looked at Marcus for a long moment, then said quietly, You're the one Ghost remembers. You smell like safety. Marcus's eyes widened. Claire blinked. Ghost remembers you? I helped smuggle him out the first time, Marcus said softly. I was embedded with one of the science teams. I watched what they did to those kids. I couldn't save them. But I saved him. Ghost thumped his tail weakly and licked Marcus's hand. Claire stood. Then let's end this. What do you need? Just time, Marcus said. And faith. The wind had returned, stronger now, slicing through the pines that towered over the clearing where the abandoned relay tower stood. The makeshift antenna Marcus had rigged to the rusted structure still hummed faintly. Somewhere, high above, the rhythmic chopping of helicopter blades approached, distant but closing fast. Claire clutched Logan tightly, her eyes never leaving the sky. Logan was weak but awake, bundled in a thick ranger's coat that swallowed his frame, his small hand curled instinctively around Ghost's fur. The German shepherd stood at his side, upright now, gaze locked toward the horizon with a quiet awareness that something was about to change. Claire turned to Marcus, who adjusted the old radio pack strapped to his chest. You're sure they're friendly? I made contact with a retired FBI agent I trust. She decoded my signal. Said they're sending extraction, non-lethal team only. Marcus's voice was steady, but his eyes flicked toward the tree line often. But we don't have long. If the wrong people intercepted any part of that signal, we'll have company. The wind shifted. Ghost's ears perked up. He growled low, not a threat, but a warning. Logan looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. They're coming. But not just the helpers. Others too. Before anyone could speak, a dull thud echoed across the trees, a sound that didn't belong to the helicopter. It was ground-based. Fast. Claire turned. Vehicle? Marcus cursed under his breath. They followed the signal. The chopper's rotors roared louder overhead. A black dot appeared in the sky, growing as it descended. Claire saw the faded emblem on its underbelly, not military. FBI, just as Marcus said. Relief surged, then vanished. Ghost backed away from Logan. Slowly. Deliberately. Ghost! Claire called. The dog looked at her, then at Logan. He didn't bark. Didn't whine. Just stood perfectly still, as if time around him had paused. Logan stepped forward. He's telling me something, he said quietly. His voice carried across the wind like it didn't belong to a child anymore. He says if he gets on that chopper, they'll trace his signal. And find me. Claire stared, frozen. What? But Marcus disabled the chip, didn't he? I thought I did, Marcus said, shaken. But if there's a secondary trigger, if they've got satellite tracing on the neural signature, they could follow both of them straight to wherever we land. Ghost turned to the woods. His tail flicked once, then again. No, Claire said, stepping forward. We'll hide the chip again, shield the signal. But Logan reached out and held her hand. He's already decided, Mom, the boy said, his voice soft and certain. He's not going. The chopper hovered now, blowing leaves in violent swirls across the clearing. 2 agents rappelled down, a woman and a man in civilian gear. The woman removed her helmet and revealed sharp cheekbones, dark skin, and intelligent eyes. Her name was Agent Serena Bell, mid-30s, ex-military with a calm presence that didn't demand attention, it earned it. She approached carefully, hands open, gaze passing over Marcus and Claire before landing on the child. Then the dog. Is that him? She asked. Marcus nodded. That's Ghost. Bell's jaw tightened. There's a convoy inbound behind us. Unmarked SUVs. You've got maybe 60 seconds to make your decision. Claire turned to Logan. Honey, we can't leave him. We have to, Logan said. He crouched down beside Ghost, placing both hands on either side of the shepherd's scarred face. Ghost pressed his muzzle against Logan's chest and closed his eyes. He says he'll lead them away. Far away. Long enough for us to disappear. Claire's heart broke. She fell to her knees beside them. No, he just got back. We just found him. Logan shook his head slowly. He's not saying goodbye. He's saying go now. Ghost licked Logan's cheek once, then turned to Claire and nudged her palm gently with his nose. Claire choked back a sob. Her fingers brushed the torn collar that still hung loosely from his neck. He wants me to remember something, Logan said suddenly. He says to tell the truth, no matter how scary, no matter who tries to silence it. Claire reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the chip blocker Marcus had built. She held it out to Ghost, but the dog stepped away. He says no more hiding. Ghost turned and sprinted toward the trees. For a dog still recovering, he moved like wind-made flesh, silent, determined. In seconds, he vanished into the forest's shadow. The first SUV broke through the trail line, tires skidding on wet dirt. Agent Bell pulled Claire and Logan toward the chopper. Now! The engine roared as the trio lifted into the sky, wind roaring around them. Claire clutched Logan to her chest as the forest receded beneath them. Logan didn't cry. He stared out the side window in silence, one hand resting over his heart. He'll find his way back, Claire whispered, unsure if it was to reassure her son or herself. Logan didn't answer. But after a long moment, he said, he already did. The safe house was nestled on the outskirts of a sleepy coastal town in Oregon, far from the chaos they had escaped. The ocean murmured in the distance, its sound a soothing lull that wrapped around the modest bungalow like a protective spell. The wind carried salt and pine in equal parts, and the sky wore the gray hue of early spring mornings. It had been 3 weeks since Claire and Logan had last seen Ghost. 3 weeks since the helicopter lifted them out of the woods and away from everything they had once thought normal. The Witness Protection Division had relocated them under new names, new backgrounds, and in a house that felt more like a staging area than a home. But to Claire, anything was better than looking over her shoulder every hour, or waking in the night to Logan's silence and wondering if he'd ever speak again. Logan, however, was changing. Each day he rose before dawn, slipped on the oversized wool sweater the FBI had issued, and padded barefoot into the den where he sat by the window and drew. He never said much, but his hand moved with purpose. He only ever drew one thing, a dense forest, always under twilight, always with a single figure standing tall in the center. A German shepherd, backlit by faint stars and tree silhouettes, eyes glowing like twin lighthouses. Claire watched from the kitchen each morning, clutching a mug of stale instant coffee. She no longer asked what he was drawing, she knew. Every line was Ghost. Every shading, every tree. Sometimes Logan added something new, a broken collar, a scar across the flank, or distant eyes filled with silence and promise. It was as if the dog had never left, or had gone somewhere deeper inside Logan, somewhere that even Claire couldn't follow. Their FBI handler visited once a week. His name was Agent David Harmon, a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with graying temples and deep-set eyes. Despite his tough exterior, Harmon had a quiet warmth. He often brought Logan small art supplies, never commented on the repetitive subject matter, and let the boy draw in peace while he updated Claire. "You're safe here," he said during his last visit. "The story's spreading. We might actually get this out into the public domain, Claire. Marcus is working the press. Said he has something big planned." Claire had nodded, but remained skeptical. She'd seen too many hidden files, too many redacted reports, too many people willing to erase the past with a single keystroke. And still, every night, she replayed Ghost's final glance before disappearing into the woods, resolute, proud, heartbreakingly calm. That morning, the television, usually untouched, was on. Claire had walked into the den to find Logan sitting in front of the screen, remote abandoned on the floor, his knees drawn up to his chest. His drawing pad was discarded beside him, pages fluttering open to reveal the same forest, the same dog. On the TV, the banner read, "Live, investigative journalist Marcus King breaks silence on Project Echo." The studio was stark, but Marcus sat confidently at the center. His beard was trimmed, his dark eyes steady but flashing with fire. To his right sat Agent Serena Bell, who had escorted them onto the helicopter weeks before. And to Marcus's left, Logan inhaled sharply, was Ghost. Claire's knees buckled slightly. She sat beside Logan and stared. Ghost was alive. He looked thinner, and there were new scars across his chest and paw, but his posture was unchanged. Noble, patient, eyes sharp, scanning the studio, as if still on duty, still protecting. The interviewer, a clean-cut anchor named Peter Donnell, leaned forward. "Mr. King, is this the dog referred to in your files as Ghost?" Marcus nodded. "He's one of the last survivors of Project Echo." "And you're saying, this dog, he's more than a K9? Marcus glanced down at Ghost, who looked up at him with unmistakable awareness. "He's a soldier, a messenger, and the only reason I'm sitting here alive." Serena Bell added, "We've verified neural scan data that shows real-time nonverbal bonding between this animal and specific children. The research was illegal, unethical, and buried. Ghost wasn't meant to survive. But he did, and now he's proof." Claire glanced sideways. Logan was crying, silently, no trembling lips, no noise, just tears streaming down his cheeks. His mouth moved, but the words weren't for her. "He says hi," Logan whispered. Claire looked down at her son, stunned. "What?" "He just said hi, Mom. He says he's tired, but okay. And he's proud of me." Claire didn't speak. Couldn't. She reached over and took his hand. On screen, Marcus leaned forward. "To anyone watching, this isn't about one dog or one child. It's about remembering that we owe the truth to those who can't speak for themselves, and to those who still can, but were never believed." The broadcast continued, detailing files, footage, and whistleblower accounts. Claire barely heard it. Her eyes stayed fixed on Ghost. And Ghost, on that small screen thousands of miles away, lifted his head slightly, ears twitching, eyes focusing forward. It was as if he knew. Logan smiled faintly. He's waving goodbye. But he says it's not really goodbye. Claire closed her eyes, let a tear slide down her cheek. In that moment, in a bungalow built for secrecy, far from where it all began, she understood something that transcended explanation. This wasn't a story about science or exposure. It was about connection. Ghost had been created to serve, but he chose to love. He was programmed to obey, but he chose to protect. And in the silence between a child's breath and a mother's heartbeat, something eternal had been built, untouched by time, unbroken by distance, and brighter than any screen could ever capture. Sometimes, God does not send miracles wrapped in thunder or fire. Sometimes, He sends them with 4 legs, steady eyes, and a heart that simply refuses to give up. Ghost was never just a dog. He was a guardian, a messenger, and proof that even what mankind tried to silence, love, loyalty, truth, can still speak louder than lies. Through Logan's eyes, we see what innocence can reveal when the world stops listening. Through Claire, we understand a mother's courage to fight when no one believes her. And through Ghost, we're reminded that sacrifice, when rooted in love, becomes eternal. In real life, we may not find hidden laboratories or mysterious chips, but we do encounter silence. Lonely children, broken veterans, abandoned animals, overlooked truths. And maybe, just maybe, the same God who sent Ghost into that wall of concrete still sends us signs. Quiet ones we must choose to hear. Let this story remind us, miracles still happen. They may not be loud. They may come in fur and walk through forests. But they're real. They're with us. And sometimes they wait for us to believe again. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment below and type amen if you believe that love, loyalty, and divine timing still exist. Share this story with someone who needs hope. Subscribe to the channel to hear more true and powerful stories like this one. Say a prayer tonight for every child who feels alone, for every dog waiting to be rescued, and for every miracle that hasn't yet found its home. May God bless you, and may your heart always stay open to the quiet miracles.